Welcome to the Bitcoin Builder Show. We do this show weekly every Tuesday. Thank you for joining us. We're excited for today's show. Um, and today we're going to be diving into a conversation about RWAs and tokenized assets. This show is powered by Arch Network. Arch is a performant VM and decentralized verifier network built on Bitcoin. Developers can leverage Arch to deploy composable DeFi apps natively on Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin native DeFi, no need for wrap Bitcoin or deposits. Never leave your Bitcoin wallet. Sign regular Bitcoin transactions to swap, borrow, lend, and access yield from your Bitcoin holdings. But today's show, we're going to be kind of zooming out from Bitcoin and our regular topics, focused in on the Bitcoin ecosystem and kind of zooming out, as I mentioned, to talk about RWAs. Today, I'm joined by Sheena from NodeOps, which is an AI-powered deep-in orchestration layer. And we'll get into that definitely here shortly as well. But Sheena, thanks again for joining us. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Really excited and looking forward.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We're going to be diving into the topic. I guess we'll kind of dive right in and get into sort of what's the value proposition around kind of like zoomed out. I've been mentioning RWAs. We definitely want to get into sort of a little bit of the nitty gritty of what NodeOps is doing in terms of DPIN and what it means to be the orchestration layer for DPIN, but kind of starting with that value proposition for trading real world assets on chain, even as a kind of a broader sector for adoption. Really glad to have you here. And so to kind of start us off, obviously recently, and kind of especially this year, we're seeing a huge increase in the adoption of crypto from a broad perspective, from the new regulations and issuance of ETFs that we've seen to large companies investing in Bitcoin and other ecosystems. Obviously, your infrastructure spans, I think I saw 45 different blockchain ecosystems supported. So I wanted to get your take kind of broadly starting out here before we dive into some specifics about NodeOps and DeepIn, and kind of what your team's built more specifically, but just on the topic of RWAs and crypto. For some context, so our CEO shared today, and I'll go ahead and pin it up top if anybody wants to take a look at the post. It's a post from Chintai announcing their partnership with Smart Gold to bring $1.6 billion of vaulted assets on chain. So I wanted to get your take on this. Yeah, whole concept of real world asset adoption, tokenizing assets on chain. What's your take? Are we just seeing the tip of the iceberg here? What's the value prospect and potential, and where are we at right now?
Well, that's a great topic actually to start with. But yes, definitely there's no look back now. That's what I, personally and strongly believe. With more regulations coming in, that's actually a very valid point because when you have regulations, there's more trust that's built along. And we're trying to bring in like vaulted assets, like off late if you see like many other kind of assets, like for example, Tesos came up with uranium, and then a lot of deep diving into assets coming with respect to gold, silver, or real estate. And then you're trying to lock this up in custody and represent it digitally as tokens on chain. It's, I think, one of the most direct bridges that we are trying to bring out between traditional finances and crypto. And with more valued partners coming on board, with having more verification and variability coming on chain, I think we are moving on to a very different space altogether, but totally backed by strong partners, totally backed by, facts and figures that can be purely verified. And of course, then while we do that, we are also trying to bring in a lot of accessibility. So anywhere, you could end up owning a piece of, say, land, or even in case of other valuables, you're just becoming a part of it, which is tradable like 24/7 on chain, right? So that's like superbly wonderful. So if I have to give you like my take in a line, I think this is just the starting. It's going to scale. And of course, infrastructure underneath is decentralized, reliable, and transparent. So I think there is a lot of trust, and there would be a stronger synergies that we would be looking for in the coming days.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a really interesting topic, especially coming to Bitcoin now. So I think it's great that projects like NodeOps and so many trailblazers in the space have done this on other chains. But what's really interesting about the regulatory aspect is being the precursor for RWAs is investors and institutions, family offices, they were starting to like kind of understand, oh, crypto might be interesting. I might want to dip my toes in. They weren't gonna do any of that until there was enough of a framework that they didn't feel like they were just gonna lose all their assets, especially when you're talking about taking the value of something real hard, like my real estate, like my gold, and putting it on chain. And then if the regulatory environment doesn't allow for that, suddenly you've lost this like hard physical thing that you built connection to, right? And when there wasn't a regulatory environment, there wasn't as clear of a route for ordinary investors or long-term investors, institutional investors to do that. Now, what's interesting is as soon as that regulatory environment comes in and there is some clarity around how you can do this, well, what's their first thought going to be? It's not going to be, let me go do it on, you know, Doge chain or something, right? It's like it's not gonna be on some like, people aren't just gonna be like, let me like put my real estate on a meme coin chain, right? They're asking where can I put this and have the security of a longstanding real world asset that I've been wanting, but also the instant liquidity, the flexibility of tokenized assets. And I think a clear answer, and of course we're biased here, but I think Bitcoin is where that lives, right? I mean, it's not just that Bitcoin is a hard asset, not just that it has the highest liquidity, and not just that it has all these other really strong traits. It's a simple fact that if regulation has been the finger in the dam, so to speak, well, regulation has only really created clarity for Bitcoin and the select few other chains, right? And Bitcoin being probably the one that most countries and most people are familiar with and comfortable with, right? So I think that's what's really interesting here is that whether we're talking about, the types of RWAs that, are happening with NodeOps or whether it's tokenized gold. Shintai was at our conference in Vegas and was an interesting partner of ours and, them tokenizing gold on chain on Bitcoin. It's going to be really interesting to watch it happen, facilitated by Arch, right? But I would just say, like, no matter what the asset is, I think the first place that people will try to stop at is Bitcoin. And as long as we create a programmable environment that allows them to do so securely, the regulation is already there for Bitcoin in a way that it isn't for other chains. And so you have a real opportunity for Bitcoin where we've heard people talk about runes, ordinals, meme coins on Bitcoin, NFTs on Bitcoin, and stuff like that. But we haven't heard as much about RWAs on Bitcoin. And I think it's really a missing part of the conversation that just now people are starting to realize, oh, wow, this is going to be huge.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's you have kind of really put it beautifully out there.
Yeah, well, it's just something it's going to be fascinating to watch. And so I'm curious more about some of the deep end stuff that you guys are doing, though. And, Sheena, what is kind of a way to conceptualize and think about what you're doing and how it relates to the world of RWAs?
Sure. Would love to take that, but taking a step back, I think because I'm interacting with your community for the first time, so it would be great to like kind of give a very quick rundown about what NodeOps is. So the idea of a NodeOps when when we thought about it was very simple. Back then, it was just about running infra, being a kind of a nightmare for builders, right? Where they were spending a lot of time, efficiency in setting up the nodes and infra than actually building the real product. So primarily, we wanted to fix that by making an infra as easy as clicking a button. And fast forward today, what we are doing is we have more than 706K verified users, generated about 4 mil till date in revenue. And yeah, we are partnered with 80 plus ecosystems. So, we are very focused on trying to bring in infra for the builders who are out there. And in this whole journey today, we have also built up our first Telegram bot, which lets you deploy nodes, farm compute, top up your credits directly in Telegram. So kind of bringing deepen in your pocket. So that's a very high level, understanding of what NodeOps is doing. But if you were to ask me that what's that core, the core problem that NodeOps is trying to solve. So I think the biggest issue that, we kind of translated was access to infra. So when you wanted to launch like a validator or spin up a blockchain node or run an AI workload, it's still way too complicated. And besides that, it's also an expensive affair. So most teams just fall back on AWS, Google Cloud, or a very handful of centralized node providers. So primarily what we do is we flip that model. With NodeOps, what happens is infra becomes, again, the same ingredients of what you look at a Web3 project, right? It's permissionless, it's decentralized, and at the same time, it's highly rewarding. So, essentially what you can do is you can deploy instantly. Every action on the network gets like a value into the community through the native token as well. So, if I were to relate it to a real case or a real client that we worked on, so for example, Ether. So they run one of the largest centralized GPU node clouds, and they have round about 428K GPU containers. So now running checker nodes for them is normally very complex and highly expensive. So through NodeOps console, we made it like a single click simple, and it was a very simple deployment, much lesser in time, very highly cost effective, and today nearly 10% of their global checker node infra is powered through NodeOps. So that's the kind of problem that we are trying to solve, turning technical infra into something that anyone can access. And now relating, I think your second part was trying to relate it to RWA. Was that the second part?
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, basically, like, I think the question would be more about how we try to explain what deepen is, right? Primarily. That's where the broader sector we fall in. So deepen is nothing but it's your physical infrastructure which has the ingredient of being decentralized. So instead of now running on Amazon or Google, running huge data centers which charge you like a bomb and everything is very centralized in a few hands. So the idea is to get all people around the world come plug in their own compute, their CPUs, GPUs, and then share that power with others. That's a very, very simple breakdown of deepen. Now, where does NodeOps come in this? Like, where where do we position ourselves in that? So primarily what, as a tagline or as a narrative that we have is this is the cloud that belongs to the builders. Because for us, like I mentioned earlier, it's for us to solve the issue which, a lot of builders typically face. So traditionally, if you wanted to run like a validator or a AI workload, you'll have to rent a server, right? Again, so that's where we're trying to bring in the RWS side. So you have to rent a server, configure it yourself, keep it updated, and also ensure that it's secure. Very technical, very time consuming. So with NodeOps, you don't have to deal anything of that sort. What you have to do is just go into the console, pick a plug and play template, click a button, and your node or workload is live in seconds. So what we have tried to bring in is we have tried to bridge that together. So behind the scenes, what's happening now? So behind the scenes, instead of a centralized company providing the machines, you're tapping into a marketplace which is full of community provided CPUs and GPUs. That means the network is growing, the community is growing. It's not as like a single company which is scaling, but everyone is scaling here together. So this is what, in very simple breakdown, I've tried to, try to simplify the words so that, we're able to bring in what exactly, we mean when we say that we are a deepened project.
I'm curious too if anyone here in the crowd might be interested in learning more about this. If you guys have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you up as a speaker. But Brian, I'll let you take it from here because I might have to drop off.
Yeah, I was gonna actually follow up on that with a question, just kind of dig in a little bit deeper, with the tech side of things. So ultimately from well, I guess not even necessarily into the tech side of things, but from like a I guess an audience perspective or target user perspective, perhaps it seems like your offering is on the level of it's bringing the concept of like own your own infrastructure, and then through this it's decentralized access to infrastructure. So obviously that comes with a lot of benefits to the user. I'm imagining that a lot of teams and builders, which you're even mentioning that as you're speaking, are your sort of end user and target audience for leveraging your tech. But it seems that it's been simplified down to the level, kind of like getting to the point of AI powered, and that concept, but simplified down to the level of even individual users. So I was just curious, like, do you, with your user base, I know that you want it to be accessible so that anyone can run it, but do you find that this is something that is valuable or has offering to like individual users, builders, teams? Who's your user base there?
So in terms of that's a very good question and a very valid question.
And I
In
guess
terms
like some of the products are related, right? Because you have a suite of products
of
I saw on your website, right?
Yeah, so let me first tell you about the other products that are also there. So let me just walk you by through quickly because then I'll be able to answer it better about the end users. So first we have is a staking hub. So staking, I mean, it's like trying to bring in the DeFi angle. So users can come, they can stake native tokens, they can stake other assets which are available. They earn the rewards. So it's even more engaging than a traditional staking because it's like a dual reward which has been embedded in the staking hub. It's gamified. So it's not just that you stake and wait, you actually get a lot of multipliers, boost, and dual incentives. So it's kind of trying to make the participation quite interesting experience. So that's about the staking hub. Second, we've got the security hub. So security hub is something that we added in the month of, so it was obviously it was visioned quite long back, but I think publicly we went live with it in the month of June. So if you're a builder, one of the scariest things is trying to push the code that has any kind of issues in that or vulnerabilities in that. So normally audits would take weeks and cost a lot. With the security hub,
Yeah, you're pushing a break live. You push it live and it breaks everything ultimately. Yeah, very, very risky.
yes, yes. So, so we have a AI powered scan, get the feedback right away, and even see suggested fixes. So that's the other product that we have. And then we have a marketplace, which I had very briefly checked about. So think about it like an app store for infra developers. So you can publish ready to use templates for nodes, apps, compute workloads. So if someone else is also using your template, you can actually get paid. So it turns infra into a collaborative economy. So one great template can actually enable thousands of deployments and the creator gets rewarded every time. Having said this, so it's of course no brainer that who all are our end users. So of course we have builders, we have individual users who want to come and let their machines get rented. We have a lot of B2B integrations where we're able to help projects, provide them like a console and help them fill up their infrastructure needs. So we have all the three buckets checked in as our end users.
Okay, great. Grace, do you have a question that you want to jump in here on this topic?
Hi guys, yes I do. Thank you so much. Hi Shruti, nice to meet you. You just touched upon the security hub. I was wondering, how do you ensure trust and reliability because it's in a permissionless network of providers?
So yeah, that's actually a good question again. So what we have done is we have also collaborated with some third parties which will be providing the certifications. So that is one. Secondly, what is there is that we have mechanics to confirm about the uptimes and have, so again, I'm not a tech person, so this is more from the tech side, a question to be answered. But at a very high level, we do have audit firms working along with us, and we have ways to fix up the bugs. So it's more about trying to identify if your template has any inbound bugs or vulnerabilities, which are then tried to be, given a solution by the team. So, and it's all run by AI. So it's like a AI powered scan, which gives you a feedback directly. So that's how it's running. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
So is my background. I mean, I think I didn't introduce myself, by the way, before I get too technical questions. Uh, quick background. I'm a finance and a taxation person, wherein I was working for a decade with a big four, EY. And then I think I was quite done with my job and decided to explore more into Web3. And NodeOps was basically, I met the co-founder during my days when I was serving at another company. And he discussed about this. And I was the first angel investor to NodeOps and came in as a legal and a finance advisor. And today, besides the legal and the finance that I handle for the company, I take care of an overall BD side and overall marketing side, entire handling on the token side. So yeah, so that's my role at NodeOps.
Oh, great. I have a few questions around the tokenomics, but I'm
Yeah.
Ryan, go.
So Grace, I'll come back to you in a moment because I was going to go back to the tokens topic. You mentioned staking, so we can come back to that topic in just a second, and you can pose your next question. But just to kind of like wrap up on the tech side of things slightly, since we entered that kind of question, I was going to ask about that. As well. And I guess kind of like related to tokens, I'll just ask kind of in a related manner, which blockchains are we talking about? And then we can get back to the tokens that are on them later as far as, I was asking about, you're orchestrating infrastructure across a lot of different chains. Is that in like a singular fashion where people are running nodes for that particular chain? Or like which ecosystems are involved in what you guys have built?
So, well, like I mentioned, we are working with like 80 plus blockchains as on date. So there is like, so what happens is collaborations across ecosystems is like it's a different ball game altogether, right? So when ecosystems are sharing infrastructure, everyone grows. That's why we say that NodeOps is chain agnostic. That is, we're supporting more than 80 plus networks. So a good example is, say, if a project is using NodeOps to run validators, say on Ethereum or Solana, all from the same interface. So normally what you will need is you will need three totally different setups. But then it's just about click, run, and deploy. So that's where the coordination we believe infra needs, a simple, unified, and collaborative. And that is something, again, which NodeOps is providing. So we are trying to get it more easier, so that the philosophy is that isn't like a zero down or something, but where we're letting the ecosystem share the infra and everyone grow along with that.
So ultimately, you're bringing all of the necessary infrastructure and support for running an entire protocol. Essentially, it could be or supporting a project, and bringing it all in house under one roof to the level that they could run it in house, and it's supported by your
Yes.
protocol.
So
Right.
basically, yeah. So we will be catering to all your infra needs, trying to solve all the issues that you have, so that you can just focus on building.
Okay, and so ultimately, I was just gonna relate back to, you mentioned staking, and you can expand on that a little bit, as far as like the model and how things work in your system. But I was gonna ask, which tokens are involved. I mean, is this something where people can take like their Solana or their ETH or other major altcoins or even Bitcoin or I know you do have your own native token, so I was just curious how the tokenomics and things like that work specifically related to staking and that whole offering.
All right. So here, primarily there are two kinds of staking, right? One staking is that typically what you see on exchanges out there or on various wallets that you come, you stake a particular asset and you get a guaranteed APY, which is basically the rewards. That is one side, but we separately have a staking hub. So in staking hub, what we have done is, so like for example, we have a collab with Polygon, we have it with beamable nodes. So you come, you stake for a duration, and then there's a dual reward there. So what you're doing is, so before we did not have a token, we were giving away G nodes. G node was basically the credit points, which could be then claimed into the node token. But now what we have is that you go there, you stake for a duration, and while you're earning rewards on that particular asset which is available. So we don't have many at the moment. We have about 4 to 5 at the moment on the staking hub live. You can just go to nodeops.network and you can explore and get more details from the staking hub. And over there, while you're earning rewards on, say, beamable nodes, or you're earning it on Polygon validator nodes, you can plus also earn rewards in Node token. So it's just like gamifying and dual incentivization.
Okay, thank you. Grace, you can go ahead if you have another question.
Thank you. So I understand. I think I just had a quick look. And I understand the token uses a mint and burn model. Did I understand that right?
Yes, we have a burn and
Yeah.
win token. Last Friday was the first burn that we did. 3% of our supply was cut down. Yeah.
So how do you maintain that sustainable demand and prevent that inflationary pressure with this model?
Uh, all right. So I don't know how much you have been to the burn and win mechanism, but at very high levels, so this burning is all linked to revenue and buybacks. So as you know that NodeOps, before even we launched our token, we were a revenue positive. And so far our revenue recorded is 4 million. So for us, it was product was demand first. We created a good amount of demand, right? And there was a good amount of revenue that was recorded. Now, this revenue is something which has been utilized or translated into tokenomics. And that's why we say that this burn and mint mechanism or the tokenomics is backed by real demand. So that was already there, right? And then, basis the calculations and basis the revenue that we were trying to burn, the amount of tokens was computed that was equivalent to 3%. It has a part of the historic revenue. And that is how it was burned. And this whole process is going to continue in a very mathematical fashion, in a very, it's going like every revenue that we have on chain is going to be backed by that. And that is how the burn mechanism is going to run.
Thank you. That's super useful. And I think so. I think Brian asked you a question around staking. Now, in my limited experience, you need to incentivize providers and actually the community to stake the token, and maintain that high quality infrastructure instead of just chasing rewards. How are you managing to balance that?
I didn't really catch the exact question here. Could you like
So how
rephrase it?
yeah. So how do you incentivize the providers to stake the token and maintain high quality infrastructure instead of just chasing the rewards?
So see, again, if you look at the staking hub right now in terms of active assets, like I mentioned, we have Polygon, Hyperliquid, Beam, Eigen. So these are the ones that are actively being staked, right? And of course, there is the reward flow, which is also coming from these assets. But besides that, when NodeOps talks about community first and whatever we are earning, we're also sending it back to the community. And there is a portion, I think about, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 25%, which is reserved for the stakers. So that's how, while we are building, while we are earning, we're trying to give back to the community of every penny that, NodeOps is trying to credit.
Thank you.
I hope I've been able to clarify and get some more color on your questions.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Grace, for asking. Just to kind of transition a bit here, and progress forward in the conversation. And you did touch on this a little bit. You're ultimately you're providing infrastructure for teams that are building in the space, generally speaking, and Arch, at the end of the day, we're focused on unlocking DeFi development for Bitcoin specifically. So the whole user experience from a team's perspective and a builder's perspective is front of mind for us constantly. So we have similar missions in that regard. I was wondering, I just wanted to circle back to this topic because I wanted to ask about it. What's your general sort of like philosophies, and how do you think about supporting developers and the builder experience? It seems like your products and thought process are kind of aimed in that regard to begin with.
Absolutely. So I think I was also reading a lot about Arch, and I think we're pretty much aligned on a couple of things when it comes to supporting the builders. So for us, primarily community has been first. Builders, fulfilling their needs has been the priority, and that's where NodeOps comes out from. So developer experience for us is topmost priority, because if the infrastructure is not simple, uh, strongly I feel that adoption won't happen. Because till the time you don't simplify that layer that is like a must or imperative, it's difficult to let the adoption flow in seamlessly. So that's why, that is another reason why we have got these template first or one click deployments or pre built modules. And of course, like that's why I also touched upon very briefly about the security hub, so that there is a constant and a very easy monitoring. So you don't need to hire like a DevOps team or spend weeks to, trying to figure it out and having your entire bandwidth, focus, efficiency spent over there. So what we want is that the developer experience should be, must be imperative that it's highly smooth, so that for them infrastructure is made super easy, super simple, so that the next step, that is adoption, that is more easily seen. A concrete example over here, a partner team was able to launch like validators across multiple ecosystems in a matter of couple of hours using NodeOps. Normally, that would have taken weeks of setup, and they could when we are able to make these kind of needs simplified for them, they can actually focus on building their product instead of worrying a lot about the infra. That's exactly the experience that we want the builders to feel. And with every feedback, with every testimonials that the team receives, there is a new challenge that we kind of, observe on day-to-day side. And that's what, the engineers or the back end and the front team ensures that they're able to fulfill. So where, kind of an infra, like for example, just take up like about gaming. Initially, a game to build would have taken like 2 years. Slowly, it came down to 2 months. Slowly, it came down to 2 weeks. And now we also have examples and, Web2 infra companies where they're trying to, you can deploy a game actually in like 2 minutes or something, right? So what's happening is that, these kind of companies are trying to support the builders by fulfilling the infra needs. And that is, again, where NodeOS falls into place.
Right, so you have this more rapid and disseminated access to infrastructure that can keep up with the velocity of development that is both it's both, like, at the same time, it's the same level of, like, at the end of the day, sophistication as the 2-year development that you were talking about because of the advancement in technology, but equally on that level of advancement is shrunk down the time that it takes to launch. So you're talking about the highest level of quality in the shortest amount of time frame, and having infrastructure match that level of like putting that capability for scaling and velocity in place. I think it just shows that there's like a huge gap, right? So ultimately, you guys are thinking in that regard in providing infrastructure, and it just seems to match the decentralization aspect, and boiling it down to you can run your own individual nodes, which you're right, we very much align with. So very interesting model that you have that you're offering there. So how is it ultimately at the end of the day AI enabled? Is that again on sort of the user experience side of things, the people who are accessing it? Just that
Uh,
makes it click.
so
You talked about like from the click of a button, you can spin up a node.
yes, yes, yes. So that's right. And like I also mentioned, we also have a Telegram bot. So you can go, you can try to test the Telegram bot where you can deploy nodes actually by a few commands on Telegram itself. So asking about like, how NodeOps is supposedly, or how do we label it as an AI powered orchestration layer? So think about it like a traffic control maybe. So you've got workloads flying in. You need to send them to the right places, the right CPU, the right GPU, or the right nodes. So traditionally, that could be done like it was very static. Like I said, you'll have to go out, rent a machine, secure it, and all those n number of steps that you have to do. But what we have built in is it's like very dynamic. Workloads are routed where they'll perform the best. Costs are balanced, and it's like if and again, like of course we're trying to fulfill these needs, we're trying to fill up these blockers, and of course with further up top in products like security hub, if there's an unusual activity it can be flagged early. So it's like trying to drive it more. Of course it's all AI driven. The everything is in place to ensure that there's a smooth running and there is a consistent performance that any builder would be looking forward when they're trying to bring up their products.
Right, and at the end of the day, that's offering, so kind of like thinking through from developer experience and offering that the level of tooling and developer suite that you want to, thinking through to the end user on the user experience side, that results in things like uptime and support
Yeah,
for the
the
application.
up
Right. Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
And keep going.
So
Like, I was even gonna ask about this, like, because part of what you're offering is, and like us, we talk about, because just to kind of, add a little bit, in there to relate it and relate the conversation, I think this will help in terms of context. Arch is doing the same thing in terms of using Bitcoin. Bitcoin is costly. To do a transaction is dependent entirely on mempool fees. However many sats per vbyte it takes to get your transaction through is dictated by the mempool and activity. So right now it's not very costly, but it can be very costly. And deploying things on chain can be very cost prohibitive. So Arch is a way that you can do things much more cheaply and then settle less frequently to Bitcoin, or anchor your data perhaps in your stack in a different way to settle it to Bitcoin and leverage the security of the base chain while also accessing things like cheaper cost for running your application, like you're mentioning. So even just kind of like we're getting back to like NodeOps and the topic, and you can continue. Part of your offering is doing just that, thinking through from the developer experience and how these offerings can ultimately impact and fit into the product that you're trying to build for the user
absolutely. See,
and your
yeah.
model as a business, right?
Yes, absolutely. Now, see, again, if you pick up like a cloud service provider like AWS or Google, it's an expensive affair, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer. But when you're trying to bring in community with their, where you rent a machine from the users and from the providers, sorry, from the providers. So what's the outcome? It's simple, right? So just imagine where everything is there under one company, one umbrella, limited players, everything centralized, and a very few members to make a monopoly. Simple law of economics. Always the pricing will go up. But the moment you bring in like more players in that network, you kind of try to leverage from smaller bits trying to make up a larger net. The outcome is generally that it's going to lower the cost. So of course that's one tick off that we are doing. Better uptime, because if it's not one, you move on to the other one, right? So obviously there's always a better performance from that side, and a very smoother decentralization. It's like, going from driving blindfolded to probably using Google Maps. I think that kind of, it's a very vague example or a very vague comparison over here. But the moment, you don't be blindfolded anymore, or you're not just, relying on a particular route and instead using Google Maps, what do you end up? You end up getting onto the fastest, the safest path. And then what happens on Google Maps, right? So if there is a massive red line, so there are a lot of contributors coming, letting you know, and then that's how you divert. So there's a cost efficiency as well, right? So that's why I said it's a very vague example to compare, you know, a decentralized cloud to a Google Map. But I think in a layman language, it's really simple to relate it in your head. So yeah, like
It's a
you mentioned.
good analogy because it introduces the value proposition in a, a tangible way that you're increasing the efficient running and, like, experience at the end of the day of whatever it is that's being built. Call it just an application, right, from the user experience side of things, and that's connected ultimately to the structure of it, and that's kind of like the value proposition and offering to teams that are adopting this model.
Right, right. Absolutely right.
And it kind of opens the possibility, to, um, perhaps, maybe smaller teams that may not have formed, or even like existing companies or teams that are looking into, expand what they're doing or increase product offering, just the accessibility to infrastructure that it unlocks is definitely interesting from a value proposition perspective.
True, true, very true. I mean,
Okay, so I was gonna wrap up with, probably a final question, and then you can give us, sort of maybe, final thoughts, beyond that as well. We're coming in on, an hour now that we've been speaking here, so, I was just gonna ask, so we're very close to launching on mainnet, and, I'm not sure if you mentioned how long you guys have been up and running. But I was going to ask just about, from an adoption standpoint, we talked about like broadly speaking, crypto adoption is ramping up. And we touched a little bit earlier on, how regulation relates to that. So I was going to ask again about what are some challenges that you faced in adoption of your product or getting to the point of product launch, or even just thinking through some of those challenges and how you solve those to get up and running and continue.
yeah, so I think the biggest challenge, which is inevitable, at least at this stage, but definitely with more regulations and more clarity coming, I think right now it is about building trust and trying to bring in that simplicity. So even if I may say that, the node deployment is a single click and it, can be done by anyone, I think, there is still a lot of concerns and issues around that. So one thing, the hardest thing is building the trust and simplicity. And obviously, the ace builders, they never want to gamble when it comes to infra, because that is where the heartbeat of their product lies. So how we have tried to solve it is by making everything more like template based, having more plug and play, having better playbooks, and backing it with economic guarantees like, the node. and giving some incentives and keeping it fully transparent. So every workload, every burn right now is verifiable on chain. So in fact, like I mentioned at a very high level, that last Friday we did our first burn and everything is on chain. All the addresses have been provided publicly. Also, at the same time, the moment we went live with the burn, we ensure that all the stakeholders across the board are, informed about it, and everything is kept very transparent. So, so this is one, adoption challenge. But most importantly, what we do is at the end of the day, NodeOps is a product first project. So we ship. Consistency is something that we follow. Being, very close to fundamentals is something which we all, very in a consistent and a disciplined manner we follow. So people trust when they see working and not just what's on the roadmap. NodeOps also on our website, we have a detailed roadmap. And believe me, if you go and just read through it, you will see that everything that was envisaged or built by us has been trying to be met within those timelines or those buckets of quarters that we had identified for that. So, yes, so I mean, there are challenges, there are roadblocks, but consistency, working towards that, and having product as your priority is, I think, the best way to ensure that these challenges are worked through very smoothly.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks for digging into tokenized assets and relating back to RWAs with us. And I know your project, Deepen and physical infrastructure, isn't necessarily something that Bitcoiners and Bitcoin holders think about to begin with. But when it comes to Bitcoin and I think everybody in all of crypto has some interest in at least holding Bitcoin, and just broadening the horizon of understanding that there's more things that you're going to be able to do with your Bitcoin to be able to grow your stack, so to speak. More things that are interesting being developed and built that you can get involved with. And even people who are interested in those decentralization aspects, supporting smaller builders, and getting involved with that type of investment, we'll call it. And out of the meme coin speculation is always something that we want to continue learning about, and supporting all of the community that is building here. So thanks again for joining us. I still am having some tech issues with my desktop, so no outro sound for us today. Usually I have a nice fun outro for us to finish our show with. So sorry, don't get to play that for us today. You miss it, Sheena. Maybe I'll
But I
send it
think I
to
can
you.
hear a bit of it in the beginning of the show. So I did hear the initial.
Oh, the intro. That's our
Yeah,
the intro and outro are different.
yeah.
But they are
Uh,
we have a standard one. I'll send so you can listen for fun. Because they're
I
just
don't
kind of
like.
intro and outro. But yeah, thanks again for joining us. Thanks everybody else down in the listeners. Thanks for coming up and asking questions, Grace. Appreciate you. We do this show every week on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Bitcoin builders. We talk to those building in the Bitcoin ecosystem and the Arch ecosystem, and more broadly in crypto. Obviously, talking to NodeOps today, not specifically a Bitcoin project, but still building some interesting things. Oh,
Something.
yeah, go ahead.
I want to add something. So, just because you guys are like all Bitcoin builders, you should also be knowing that we are a finality provider on Babylon already. So it's not that NodeOps has no nexus to Bitcoin ecosystem. And I think the next stage, I mean, it's still under the production. I mean, should not be taken as of a final thing. But yeah, we also plan to have a staking hub to provide node incentives for the BTCFI users. So it's not that NodeOps is not connected to the Bitcoin
Okay.
system. We are very much a part of your
Well, I stand corrected.
ecosystem already.
Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to hear that getting into Bitcoin DeFi. If you want to continue the conversation specifically about Arch, then we're connected. Feel free to reach out anytime. We can talk more offline. But thanks again for joining the show today. Really appreciate you. And everybody have a good afternoon or evening wherever you're at, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us today.